Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new, exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new season of FemLead. This is season 3. And while this will not be the video that you will see in our recording with Jan, our next guest, this is a special video to share some news that we've received in the meantime. So I'm very, very, very happy and honestly honored to share that FemLead has been named the finalist in top 5 initiatives of the year by the Nordic Women in Tech Awards, which means that we are now competing for the final prize of being called the Initiative of the Year in the Nordics. This is obviously a great honor, and I just wanted to make this short video and say thank you to all of you listening. Thank you for spending time listening to our interviews and hopefully using the advice that we are sharing from our guests to really better your life, not only professionally, but also personally. Thank you for following us on social media. We share a lot of posts on Instagram. We share a lot of news and posts on LinkedIn. And of course, you can check our website, femleadpodcast.com, where you can hear more about our upcoming events. This nomination and now the news that we are a finalist, top 5 at such a prestigious award show really proves that this project is needed and is welcome in the Nordic community. And I know some of you listen from outside the Nordic countries, and I'm very grateful for that. Really follow us. And if you haven't yet subscribed on Spotify, download us on iTunes, check our website, because we are coming up with some very, very cool ideas for the future. We will organize events in the future, and I would really like you to be part of the journey as we expand FemLead to new concepts. We're launching newsletters, so check out our website for more. And again, just thank you for having us in your lives, listening to this podcast. It's really an honor to be nominated and now to make the top 5. Let's hope we win, and I'll share the news about the other updates on this topic on our website. So check us out. Thank you all very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of FemLead. We are at season 3, and that is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sticking with us and joining us every second week for new episodes. We're back. And we started this season with some very, very, very interesting topics. So I hope you will all tune in for this one and the following topics. Today, we're going to talk about how to build confidence. What a topic. I know some of you have waited for this for a while. And here we are in season 3. We will have incredible guests. And today, we will talk about confidence with a special guest, Jan Fan. She's the co-founder and CTO of Code Chrysalis, a coding bootcamp in Tokyo. She started Code Chrysalis because she was brimming with ideas on how to best teach programming and develop top software engineers talent in Japan. Code Chrysalis not only helps individuals change their career through the program, but also works with large enterprises to re-engineer their teams. With Code Chrysalis, Jan is changing the way Asia trains software engineers. Code Chrysalis is Jan's second coding bootcamp. She also co-founded and served as CTO of her first coding school in Jordan, helping refugees in 2016. She focused on training and finding jobs for refugees displaced from the nearby conflict regions. Wow. Jan, welcome. It's such a pleasure to converse with you. Thank you for joining FemLead today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you look online, you will see many interviews with Jan about the tech ecosystem in Japan, the need for more talent, how diversity is crucial for any company and their development. But today we will not touch necessarily on Jan's tech career, but on her confidence to become a founder and how she thinks confidence can be fostered in women. So Jan, I'm very happy that you want to discuss this topic. Actually, when we connected first, we were thinking about what's the best topic that would both help the FemLead community, but also it's something that Jan really wanted to touch upon and maybe haven't yet specifically on an interview. And then, Jan, if you've mentioned to me, if I'm correct, that you are told in Japan that you seem very confident and that maybe your confidence is something that's not very usual. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I never really noticed it until I came to Japan. And this was something that was brought to my attention. So I started really thinking about like, oh yeah, I think I do think a little, maybe I do react differently, and why might that be the case for different situations? So I started really thinking about it, and sort of looked into my life and what's happened, and how maybe I am the way I am.
That's absolutely interesting. And I think that it's also something that I thought about, bringing to this community and to people that find out about the podcast every day, topics that would really make a difference in the way that they see their life and career. Because it's not just about how to become a software engineer, specifically, what course to follow and so on. It's also about what's the mindset to follow along. What is the way to see your life so that it doesn't become more or less a robotic path where, every 2 years you need to change your job, but it's more like what fulfills you and how can you be happy with the environment that you have. And having confidence is something that you and I both know that some women just don't have confidence to ask for a raise, confidence to go for the job they want, confidence to start a business. And I want to ask you first, how did you decide to start not one, but two coding schools in the last few years?
Well, I think I was really interested in just starting a company, and that's actually why I switched into software engineering. I saw it as a really good skill to have if I ever wanted to go and be an entrepreneur. And it just turned out that I really fell in love with the idea of coding boot camps, and also just alternative education. Because I think growing up, it was always like, okay, you go to college, like this is the traditional path to getting a job that you want and finding a career. And I did that. And the career that I landed on was something that I was completely not interested in, right? And I think a lot of people are in that, find themselves in that situation where it's like, okay, I've spent the past 4, 5, 6 years, training for this, whether it's university or whatever, only to find out that this career isn't right for me, right? And for me, that was finance. Like I made the decision, like I'm going to go into finance when I was 18, right? I didn't know anything. And then when I actually started working and, and actually working in finance, I realized like this is actually terrible. I had no idea what I wanted at the age of 18.
That's a very important point that you made there. And that is the need to decide your career path when you're very young and out of high school, usually. And the fact that you also sit on an advisory board where you help young girls, teenagers to understand that, a career can mean many things, and knowing how to code can really help you, to just have more options. It's really something that I think resonates now with what you just said and the topic of building confidence, knowing that you have more options of what to pursue. And what do you think is confidence, and what do you think about having this decision making so early on in your life? Do you think you would have done something differently looking back, considering decisions?
Yeah, I actually am not sure. I mean, I think if I had made a switch if I decided to do tech very early on, I mean, maybe I would have experienced some really great things. But also, I feel like the mistakes that I made, were really important to figuring out exactly what I needed, right? And so if I had actually done the traditional route, but chosen the right thing, like chosen tech, for instance, I would have never, I think, imagined, or I would have never discovered the idea of coding boot camps, right? And it was only because I was making a career change that I came across this concept. And sort of opened my eyes to, there is a way to change your career, change your life in a significant way without doing the 4-year university thing. And so that's how I kind of stumbled onto boot camps and started them. In terms of confidence, I feel like I never really identified it as confidence until maybe I found I started companies. I think like the process of trying to start, and I failed many times, but trying to start companies, I think each time I did it, it gave me more and more confidence in my abilities.
That's a very cool thing to say, because I did look at your LinkedIn right before we started our call today, and if obviously I will share the links to your profiles, but if people will go and check your LinkedIn, they will see that you have a coder dash failed entrepreneur experience added to your LinkedIn timeline, where you said that you have worked and started to code, trying to build different projects that didn't really materialize in any specific company.
Yeah. And, looking back, I think those were really, really important, right? Each time, I think each failed project, I would think about like, why did it fail? And also, what did I learn from it, right? And I noticed each time I had this idea for a project and I started on it, I realized that it just wasn't the right project for me. There were ideas that I had that were really good ideas, like those are businesses now, but going through the process of starting the company, like I realized this isn't working out because I don't really have passion for this, right? I'm just doing this because I have a feeling it can make a lot of money, but it didn't go beyond that. There wasn't like, I never developed like a love for whoever my customer is. And that was one of the things that I was reading about, like, oh, you need to love your customer, right? And I was like, I don't really care too much about this. I just want to make money. And so those ideas just didn't work out because there wasn't enough passion there.
Yeah. And also that the fact that you tried in order to, like you said, build up your confidence, it just shows that it comes in time. As far as at least your story it's concerned. And I feel like for many people, confidence really just doesn't happen overnight if you're not necessarily sure of things when you're very young. I wanted to ask on that note, what do you think confidence is? What does it mean for you?
Ooh, confidence is, I think, the belief in yourself that you deserve something, that you would be able to do something. I think it's that the belief that you can do something. I would say that it definitely is not something that comes naturally to most people. And I think especially for me, I identified where I had built up my confidence like throughout my life. I have to say a lot of credit goes to my mother for instilling this like kind of different way of looking at things when I was a kid. My mom was a teacher, and she used to say, there's the stereotype of the Asian mom saying like, oh, look at your cousin, she's so much better, right? My mom was more like, you and this other person who's doing better than you at life, right? Like another kid doing better in school, etc. She would always say like, look, I'm a teacher. I understand, growth and etc. And she was like, you and her, there's no difference. She is not just like inherently smarter than you. Like she's not like so much so that like that's the reason for her success. She just tries harder. And I think that understanding of like, oh yeah, okay, there's actually not too much of a difference between me and this other person. I just need to try harder. I think that really sort of changed the way that I looked at myself. And so as I kind of like made it through life, in the times where I failed, I didn't blame it on me not being smart enough or me not being whatever enough. It was usually like, well, I watched TV, like I watched TV instead of studying the night before. And that's why I got 95% on this test and not 100%, right? So it was like that kind of mindset. And it really, I think, followed me through schooling and stuff. And, even in college, in college, I chose just the absolute worst major for myself. It was economics. I chose economics because 18-year-old me was like, I'm going to go into finance. And when I studied economics, I was not doing well in my college major. Like I was very much in the middle of my class. And even then, I think the way that I was thinking about stuff, I mean, you could say that it's a bit of an excuse, but I was always saying like, look, it's not that I'm stupid and I'm doing badly. It's just because I just don't have any interest in this. Like my brain just refuses to learn this stuff. And so I think that's always sort of stayed with me of like, I did badly there, not because I was stupid, but just because I was uninterested or I just didn't prepare enough. And so I think that kind of kept me from feeling things like imposter syndrome, which I think is a really common, situation that people find themselves in. But it sort of helped me avoid that in a sense.
That's very, very interesting. And it's also a great story about how you grew up with someone who, from a very young age, instilled into you the fact that it's not something that you do wrong. It's just the fact that maybe you need to work harder and you can also have the same results. And I feel that sometimes we destroy our confidence from a young age by comparing ourselves to others and not comparing our environments and our opportunities where we start from. And I remember there's this like super inspirational, I mean, people can Google it. I don't know how it's called, but it's this field where a coach has probably 30 people in a line and they need to run. And then before they run, the coach starts saying, please take a step forward if both of your parents are still together. Please take a step forward if both of your parents have a job. Please take a step forward if both of your parents are part of your life nowadays and spend time with you in the weekends. And other things about, the social economic aspect, if you have siblings, if they're alive, like it can go very, very deep. And then they ask people to look around and say, look around you and see who is still at the finish line. There are many people who don't have opportunities, and yet some of them will reach the same level as you. So never underestimate people. Don't compare the fact that maybe you have more opportunities with the fact that you will be successful, because things can change very dramatically. And I feel that was very empowering, because it just shows that it doesn't matter necessarily your background. If you really want to do something, you should just go for it. And I wanted to ask you on that note, what do you think destroys confidence of people that actually do have a lot of opportunities and, like you said, they're not stupid. It's just that maybe they worked less and then out of a sudden they compare themselves with others that have more success.
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult question because it really depends on each individual. For me, I love competition. If I'm told that I'm doing badly or whatnot, I think I am the type to really want to try to prove someone wrong. But other people are not that way, right? If you try to make things more competitive to push them forward, that actually is detrimental to them. So I think it really varies depending on the individual, and that's what makes confidence such an elusive thing, right? What works for one person is not going to work for another.
And about men and women confidence level, on this note, about, obviously we're all different, but do you see a difference between how women and men see themselves, or how they talk about themselves and about their chances of succeeding or building a company or passing a test or otherwise failing it?
Yeah, huge. And I think there's all kinds of studies that have been done on this. But yeah, there's major differences between how men perceive themselves versus women. And I think it's just because of the way that we are conditioned growing up, right? To not be aggressive or to not be direct, to really want to like please people. But yeah, all kinds of studies, everything from, the students who raise their hands in class, right? Like women are less likely to raise their hands, even though they have the right answer, whereas men will raise their hand and many of them do not even have the right answer. Also asking for raises, applying to jobs. Because of Code Chrysalis, we help people change their careers. So a lot of what I do is helping people find jobs. And for job descriptions, I think men will read a job description and think like, well, I only fit maybe like 50% of this. That's pretty good. I'm going to apply, right? Whereas women will think, oh my gosh, I only fit 50% of this. I'm not going to apply, right? So there is quite a bit of a difference there. And so I think with regards to women, I think at Code Chrysalis, we're always trying to like just, set aside that fear or like that the negativity and focus just on the positive, because the other men in that same class are definitely doing it, right? Many differences.
A very good point with applying for jobs. And since I talk a lot about career development and, getting the right opportunity, starting your own company, co-founding a team, I feel like in many ways, women doubt more the probability of their success versus men. And I wonder what is the reason that we put so many barriers in our own setup? Why isn't it easy to just try it out and see what happens? Like, have you noticed also with the students of Code Chrysalis, or maybe in your career, throughout your career, have you noticed any patterns of what women tell themselves, like what becomes the truth in their eyes versus what men think about starting a company, being a founder or co-founder?
Yeah, generally, I think women tend to focus on kind of like what they're lacking. But also, very understandably, society punishes women more for making mistakes, right? And so we are just so much more conditioned to view mistakes with just like a heavier gaze than I think men, right? And there are so many examples of this, right? Where it's like, you have a boy and a girl, boy makes one mistake, they're like, oh, he's just being a boy. The girl makes the same mistake and she's reprimanded a little bit more harshly, right? This happens a lot. And so I think that experience and just these microaggressions, they really follow us throughout our lives, and we carry them into adulthood, and it affects the decisions that we make, the jobs that we get. So yeah, absolutely. I see that. And to summarize, I think, I think your other question was like, what are women saying to themselves? I think it's just doubting whether they would be able to do something, doubting whether they would be able to, like with the case of, I think, Code Chrysalis graduates, I think it's doubting that they would be able to rise to the occasion.
And when you started a company, what did you tell yourself?
I actually told myself that I could absolutely do this. So I had full confidence that I was going to be able to do something, get close to it. And I think, so some of that stems from actually the first bootcamp that I started. The CEO of that, that was like kind of my first, maybe not my first, but my closest sort of experience with like the mediocre white male, right? Who's like all talk and nothing else, like no experience, no skills, no nothing. And I sort of realized like, wow, I have all of these other traits that he absolutely does not have. And I can talk. Like I can go stand in front of a stage and like, and pitch, etc. So I can do all of these things. And on top of that, like, he can't do any of this, and yet he's drawing so much attention, he's getting so much support, etc. And so I just that honestly gave me a ton of confidence to see how mediocre he was and how successful he was. And then realizing once I got into that space that there were a lot of people like that. And so that gave me full confidence in myself, because I'm like, I know a lot more than these people. I can do a lot more than these people. And so there shouldn't be anything that is holding me back. That was probably the first time where I'm like, damn, like, because I was seeing, other women kicking ass and then meeting their bosses and being like, oh, she's the reason why you're successful. Like, so I can't name names. I wish I could.
No need for that. It's a very interesting point with looking at the world a bit more realistic, in a way of what is it exactly that this other person is doing to ensure success or to ensure whatever situation they have now in life. Let's say you want to have a similar job position or managerial position. What is it that this person is doing to have this situation? How are they interacting with their peers? What is the relationship with the executives? Like, if you think about like career development, you can just look at people and kind of understand what is it that they're doing to be in this position, and then understand for yourself what is it that you want to do and how are you different, and how you also have those skills, but maybe you've never proposed to host the meeting and the presentation because you said, well, nobody will say yes to me, but I never really tried, but maybe, and all of those interesting points of like connecting the dots for yourself and being like, you know what, I could probably do this. And if I fail, well, at least I tried. And I think that linked to that, I do want to ask you your recommendation for people who they don't go for what they want because they are afraid to fail. And they say, I could never do that successfully. Is there a right or wrong way of looking at this and, building confidence?
Yeah, I have a right or wrong way. I don't know if other people would agree. It might be a controversial opinion, but I think regardless of how someone feels like they might do, I think they should always go for it. Because if you don't go for it, you just automatically fail, right? It's like you don't even try, you just automatically fail.
You don't even try. Yeah. So you don't know what could have happened. Yeah.
Exactly. Like if you don't try, you never give success an opportunity to thrive, right? You never even give it like a potential, like little space to squeeze through if you don't try. And so I would always try and push people to try. And if you fail, then you fail. Like, okay, whatever. There'll be many, many opportunities to fail in your life, and this will be one of them, and that's okay. But that's always my opinion. Anything that you want, I think I hate having what ifs, right? Like, oh man, what if I had done that? Like, I hate thinking about that. I would rather think like, oh, okay, I did it and it didn't work out, and that's okay. I found out.
Yeah. It's very empowering, everything you're saying about just going for it, and also being very aware of the fact that you could fail, and that if you do, you will be fine. But I wonder, how many people consider what would happen if I fail, and then just make a list of just bad situations they can be in. If I fail, maybe I won't have money for my mortgage. How much do I want to risk this? And I wonder how many people consider it like realistically, okay, if I'm that afraid, let's see what can happen that will really make me feel uncomfortable and like feel like I'm losing control of what's going on in my life. Have you done any sort of, I don't know, realizations list, or any sort of, have you done a list with pros and cons of starting a company?
Oh, I've never really like sat down and listed stuff. I am not I prep, but I don't prep that much. Like if it's a scary situation, if I'm choosing between an easy path and a path that scares me, I'm more of like I'm not going to look and just like step off type of woman. um, but when I was thinking of quitting my finance job, I definitely thought about what would happen if I stayed and what would happen if I left. And so that was where these ideas of like, well, if I stay in my job and I don't quit and try to do something else, then these dreams that I have in my head, like they're just going to always stay there, right? Whereas if I quit, like, yes, it is scary. I am losing a stable income, like all of these, lovely things that come with having a stable income. But like maybe I have a shot of making one of these things on my dream list come true, right? Maybe I have a shot. So that's what I focused on. And another also good thought process was I remember a friend of mine had asked, do you want to be your boss? Right? Like if you don't like your job, does the person above you, is their job at least interesting? Because if it is, if you're like, oh man, I really want to be my boss, I think she's awesome and her life is super exciting and the work that she does is great, then it might make sense for you to stay at this job, slug through it, and then try to get a promotion to doing whatever he or she is doing, right? So yeah, I think I was thinking about these two things.
Right. That's also very good to share with us, because obviously, no matter who listens now, your career path will always look different. Like it will not look the same as Jan's, or like mine, like all of the other guests that we discussed with. But you always have an option to consider what could be if I don't fear what the results will be. What could be if I am confident to ask for it, for the raise, for the promotion, for changing departments, for asking for help from your current company to take maybe a sabbatical or a few months off to try out something. There are companies who offer that and who say, okay, yeah, well, if you want to try things out, we will let you get back here. Like it is a possibility in some companies. So asking, it's just so important. It's a very empowering story, and thank you so much for taking the time. I do want to ask you, as a sum up question, how did you decide on the transition? Did you, for example, have a thought of like, I want to be my own boss, or I want to build something here as a community? What made you decide to leave the field? Because a lot of people who work in finance or other fields and they don't really like it, they stay.
Yeah. So
and that's the interesting part.
Yeah, well, exactly what I was saying before, right? I just was not interested in what I was doing at all. I was interested in I wouldn't say I was completely disinterested, right? Because I wouldn't have gone down that path if I just absolutely had no interest. But I didn't like the company that I was working at. I didn't like the people. I didn't like my job. I liked reading about what was going on. I was in commodities. I liked reading about what was going on in the news and understanding how all of that sort of fit together. But in terms of actually working there, it's like I hate it. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to be able to make my own rules and be able to point to something and say like, oh, I built that, I did that. And so I kind of had this, I don't know, I sort of like had this feeling like I am better than this, like I am better than my current job, as, I don't know, arrogant as that might sound. And so one day I just quit. I just had enough.
I love the fact that you mentioned, the last point with, I knew I am better than this and I can do better than this job, because that means you really trusted your instinct and you understood your worth, and you were like, well, I can actually build something myself that would be of good quality, helping society, being my own boss, being able to manage it. And again, this is an important realization to have, and just try it out. and see like maybe,
Yeah.
I follow my instinct and I'm like, whoa, I'm actually a great manager. I can be a great leader of teams.
I don't know about being a good manager, but what I think one of the big like discomforts that I had working in finance was I knew that I was doing really badly. Like I knew I was like not a good employee. I wasn't interested in stuff. I like was really sort of like lost all the time. I was falling asleep in meetings. Like, it was bad. And I was seeing myself, like I felt like, this out of body, seeing myself and being like, man, like I am really tanking my reputation, right? Like this is not a reflection of what I can do. And not only is it not a good reflection of what I can do, the real me and like my abilities just don't even care to come out. Right? Like they don't even care to show themselves. Like there's nothing in this job that motivates me to like want to like just go the extra mile. And so I just kept thinking like if I stay here, I mean, people are just going to have a worse and worse and worse opinion of me. And that's going to make me feel terrible because I don't want to be bad at a job, right? So that was another like big thing that weighed on me that really made me switch.
Well, and a very important reflection to also like a bit reflect on your environment and how other people perceive you because you actually are not really that interested in what you're doing. And yeah, it's a very good point because you talked throughout the interview about the importance of trying it out, but also removing yourself from an environment where is not really helping you and you're not really helping the other people either. And it's just maybe the wise decision, to get out of there. So thank you very much for all of that advice. As I've mentioned, we will cover this topic, from an angle that would hopefully really help listeners. So go for it, try it out. Don't be afraid. Don't think too much about what could happen and just start going in that direction. Those are some of the key messages from Jan. Thank you so much for today. Before we go though, I do want to introduce the final 5 fire questions. So for everybody listening, these are 5 questions that Jan will answer very fast, to the point. So she would leave this interview with a couple of recommendations for you. So the first fire question is, what is one book you think everyone should read?
2 books. I'm sorry. 1 is Invisible Women and 2 is In the Flow.
Thank you. I will link everything that Jan is sharing here in the description of the episode, so you will be able to find those books. Best piece of advice you have ever received?
Oh my gosh. Probably, yeah, don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Piece of advice.
Who is your role model?
I don't have a particular role model. I think I appreciate different characteristics from different people and understanding that no one is perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. If you were to have another career, what would you choose to do?
Ooh, newscaster or like TV like anchor.
Very interesting.
I'm really good at reading a teleprompter.
That's a skill that needs to be put to use one day, I'm sure. And the last question, if you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
Oh man, I mean, the first person I thought of was like Beyonce, because why not? Or like J-Lo, because who knows? But I think the person with like a really exciting life is Elaine Welteroth. Do you know who she is?
No.
She's like an American, well, I guess now she's a celebrity, but she's had so many different careers. She was the youngest editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue for a while, and now she's a talk show host. She has a best-selling book. She's done just tons of stuff, and she has so many different projects going on. I think it'd be fascinating to just like swap places with her and see all the things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jan. Thank you for today. Thanks for the time, for the advice. And everyone, follow Jan on all social media. I will link all the links. I think it's very important to keep connected with role models that really show that things can happen, and they are happening as we speak. So best of luck, Jan, with all of your projects. I know you are spreading the word about new roles in the team. I know that you have exciting projects coming up. So best of luck with that. And thank you for joining Family today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun chatting.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.